The anomaly of Nicolas Cage. When it comes to the world of acting, it often pays to situate oneself in a particular niche to garner fame and recognition. Tom Cruise and Bruce Willis are most famous for their roles in action movies, while Al Pacino and Robert De Niro are well known for embodying the gangster mob aesthetic in stories such as The Godfather and Scarface. Indeed, association with an archetype or character mold can be beneficial for audience recognition and expectation, allowing an actor to find their voice and place in an industry while adding to their personal flair. Thus, it comes as a surprise when discussions shift to the phenomenon that is Nicolas Cage. In Anomaly, according to these assumptions, Cage has garnered a cult following and critical appreciation, all while remaining amorphous in his archetype. In the 90s and early 2000s, Cage portrayed outsiders or eccentric love interests. Fast forward to the mid-2000s and he emerged as an action hero with projects like National Treasure and Marvel's Ghost Rider. Even in collective memory, Cage is less remembered for specific roles and more for the Cage-ism he brought to those roles. Most memorable in his animated screen presence expressed through drastic shifts in mood and tone, as well as exaggerated facial expressions that became the basis for numerous internet meme formats. On the surface, this might simply be explained as Cage's inability to find his voice in the industry, that he was simply getting by and taking projects with the goal of being employed. Yet, such an interpretation does a disservice to Nicolas Cage as an actor who, throughout his decade-spanning tenure as a performer or thespian, as he likes to put it, clearly shows his love and admiration for performance in cinema. What then makes Nicolas Cage so alluring? Not simply as an actor, but a personality in and of himself. Is there some through line, some methodology to what seems like an unfocused, quantity-based approach to the movies he acted in? More importantly, how has Nicolas Cage transcended the need to be recognized through a character archetype and instead be famed for instilling his Cageness into otherwise textbook characters? From a young age, Nicolas has always been enamored by cinema as a medium to express ideas and emotions. Born a Coppola, it comes as no surprise that he was also intimately intertwined in the world of movies, stories, and production. Many times he has recounted his sense of wonder for the people he saw behind the television screen, specifically his desire to also embody the characters he had been exposed to ever since he was a child. It is from this that his aspirations to become an actor would bear fruit. In several interviews, he cited German expressionism as his main mode of acting. This approach appeared prominently from the outset of his journey into acting, alongside his drastic and sometimes experimental preparations for roles. His use of his now famous stage name Nicolas Cage stemmed from a desire to break away from the fame and expectation linked to the Coppola name. He has recounted in multiple interviews how his experience on set under the name Coppola undermined people's perception of his place and capabilities as an actor. Thus, inspired by comic book heroes and a desire to create a catchy, memorable name that would appeal to the audiences of the 90s, Nicolas took up the name Cage. Though being in several movies in the onset of his acting career in the 90s, Nicolas is most remembered in this era due to two movies in particular, Moonstruck and Leaving Las Vegas. Even though he partook in other movies of differing genres, the commercial and critical success of these two movies cemented Nicolas Cage as an actor who portrayed broken individuals in the throes of love, exemplified by the tragic Brooklyn baker Ronnie in Moonstruck and the equally downtrodden character of Ben Sanderson in Leaving Las Vegas. One would not be mistaken to then assume that Cage's trajectory was clear. That is, to hone in on his growing niche and acclaim for being a tragic romantic hero. Yet come the late 1990s, Cage did the unlikely. Rather than slowly focusing on developing a foothold in genres that garnered him initial success, Cage took a dive into the world of action movies. At the time, the choice could be seen as bold at best or foolhardy at the worst, throwing away a chance to develop his niche in order to partake in a genre many critics regarded as lowbrow. Yet, despite this, Cage found considerable success garnering acclaim in movies such as Con Air, Face Off, National Treasure, and Marvel's Ghost Rider. This was the Cage that most who grew up with him in the 2000s remember, not as a tragic romantic man who lost everything, but as a recognizable face in the action movie genre. To then assume that Nicolas Cage would now remain in his new genre would be to underestimate the mercurial nature of the actor. Just as quickly as he began to accrue public recognition and fame, Cage began to distance himself from his notoriety in action movies to pursue other projects, a shift that was less profitable for the actor. No longer did he have a crucial breakout role like that of Leaving Las Vegas or National Treasure. Cage now was remembered vaguely through snippets of his performances that were enshrined in internet memes, instead of his long tenure as an actor. It seemed that Cage's quote-unquote fickle forays into multiple projects of different movies had finally caught up to him, or so it seemed. There is something memorable and enduring about Nicolas Cage that seemed to allow his personality to ooze into all of his movies. Though the analysis so far has only touched upon a few movies that brought Cage to the mainstream, the breadth of projects he has been part of since the 90s is staggering. For all intents and purposes, Cage has less than stellar box office records with a few breakthrough roles, amidst a sea of productions that received little to no acclaim, should be seen as a telltale marker of a wayward actor, someone who was not focused or who could not find their footing in the industry. But this isn't just anyone, this is Nicolas Cage. The resurgence in serious recognition towards Cage and his role in both Mandy and Longlegs serves as an example that the actor is undeniably iconic, memorable, and most importantly versatile in his approach to characters. Looking back once more on his tenure, to assume that Cage had no direction or intention in his long catalog of performances is a surface-level observation. It fails to look deeper into the ethos of the man himself. Yes, Nicolas Cage admitted that some projects he took on were for financial incentives. However, it should also be acknowledged that financial gain was not his true end goal. Rather, it was a means by which he could recapitalize his earnings into projects or ideas that excited him. Nicolas Cage has a unique outlook on his acting experience. He views them not through their ability to obtain commercial or critical success per se, but rather as a vessel for him to perfect his artistry. After all, he is a self-proclaimed thespian, a performer who embodies characters and tries to bring out the thematic essence of said character through inner experiences. Cage treats each project, success or failure, not only as a job, but also as room for him to experiment with his craft, to begin shaping himself as an actor not in the safe space of a studio, but directly in the crosshairs of criticism and scathing feedback. Viewed through this lens, Cage's colorful portfolio and more consistent hits in recent years make sense. His choice to be part of projects that span multiple genres is a sign not of indecisiveness, but of clear intent in doing what many see as daunting, but for Nicolas Cage was essential to hone his skills. Indeed, though critics may have seen his performances as outlandish, odd, or eccentric, a retrospective outlook reveals that the one thing Nick Cage was not was an actor who did not take the craft of acting seriously. Rather, he was dedicated to pushing the boundaries of his own acting, employing methods he found evocative and moving for himself, and finding new ways to utilize them in a different setting or context. His recent resurgence, therefore, is not another fluke or momentary peak in his career. It is the beginning of Cage reflecting on his legacy and beginning to consolidate his decade-spanning experience in unique, haunting, and daring roles that now rightfully deserve the critical acclaim and spotlight that Nicolas Cage has earned. If there is any example of Nicolas Cage's legacy in film and cinema, the movie The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is proof that the industry and audience are beginning to have an honest view of the actor. Starring Nicolas Cage playing a fictional caricature of himself, the movie is an ode to the various forms and roles Nicolas Cage has taken up over the years, celebrating, not mocking, the impact Cage had on the industry and viewers. Different from other actors who would usually return to a comfort archetype, Cage is best remembered not for the roles he played per se, but the raw Cage energy he would inject into any role he took and will be in. Despite partaking in many projects, fans and critics are in unison that Cage's characters are uniquely Cage in nature, so much so that any new role he embodies would undoubtedly be identified as something only born through the artistry unique to Cage himself. Truly, Nicolas Cage is a one-of-a-kind performer, or rather, to honor his term, a thespian. His sincerity in the role he plays, regardless of the level of production, cinematography, or medium, is a clear indicator that Cage's one and only goal is performance, to embody a character, to take on challenging personas, and push his creative limits in his craft no matter how outlandish or commercially viable it may seem. Cage follows no industry standards. Rather, he charts his own path, unbound by the usual procedures and pathways that many of his peers must follow. It is this eccentricity that allows him his current success and recognition, remembered not for the roles he took, but for what he was able to bring out of them.